This was not a game that I thought I would end up doing a review for. The looter shooter genre is something that I tend to gravitate towards simply because those types of games aren't really ones that you can beat and finish. The endless amount of content and activities to do is what keeps you playing for hours on end. Destiny 2 is the big one that I play the most with over 2,000 hours played, and then occasionally I'll dip my toe in the Division 2. So when the news got out about a brand new free-to-play looter shooter that was dropping in a couple days, I decided, why the hell not? I just had finished Elden Ring for the first time, which was one hell of a journey, but I decided to pick up the First Descendant due to Destiny having some downtime in between acts and needing a break from Elden Ring before I start the DLC. So when I downloaded this game, I didn't think that there would be really much in times of investment and more of just like a couple hours of time wasted. So while I do admit those first couple hours for the game weren't the most convincing, there was a couple of times that I thought about dropping the game as a whole. But I wanted to give the game a fair shake, and if I could put over 200 hours into Marvel's Avengers and over 65 hours into Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, I figure why the hell not? Because there's not really much else coming out. And TLDR, I think that the gameplay and the loot is a lot of fun when you're just running around one of the many zones within the areas. But the microtransaction stuff does royally blow, and I just try to mostly avoid it, and I don't really see how or why you would want to pay to get some of the stuff right away, regardless of the price, which can reach up to $100 in the shop. The First Descendant isn't trying to do anything special or different, but what it is doing is trying to essentially take key components from a lot of other major titles like Warframe and Destiny and smashing them into the product that we have here today. So while we might not have the full scope of the game right here at the start, they do have a couple plans laid out for the future, and with this hot start, I imagine a lot of eyes will be on them in the coming weeks and months.
Countless descendants have shed blood to protect the sanctity of this great place. Despite their efforts, humanity is still at risk of extinction. And you are the only chance we have.
This is a bit of a show plug. I don't normally do this, but 99.9% of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. So if you do end up liking the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe as it greatly helps me out. So I start out all my reviews with a little technical block that explains my experience with the game and how it ran throughout my review period. So I've played the First Descendant now for roughly 70 hours, and I played it on PC on an RTX 4080 with an i7-13700K, with all the settings turned up to their highest possible values and DLSS set to balanced. And I did start out playing without frame generation as I had heard some issues and experienced some issues with the performance on my end. So the performance, that is actually going to be one of the first topics that I can talk about the game. Initially at launch, the game was in a pretty rocky state to say the least. And for the better part of 2 days, I wasn't even able to log in, which really sucked. And even if I was able to get logged in, I was getting disconnected in the middle of the missions, forcing me to rerun them all over again. While these issues were mostly ironed out by the weekend, they did offer up a compensation package to anyone that played during that time period with some boosters and free gold along with some cosmetics. There also was a patch that was rolled out on July 11th that aimed to fix some of the issues, as well as addressing some of the larger community feedback since the launch on July 2nd. And there was even another update on July 18th that seemed to fix a lot of the performance issues and whatnot, and I've actually been running frame generation since then, and it works great now. Graphically, I don't think the game is really trying to do anything special. I will admit that I really do like the hub world of Albion. It does remind me a lot of the tower and the way that it's structured, but the actual look of it reminds me of something more out of the Final Fantasy VII remakes that we just recently got. In the open world areas that you're going to be progressing through over the course of the main story aren't really anything special, but they do have a nice visual flair to them with a decent amount of variety when it comes to the terrains and the locations as well. The early game area can seem pretty standard and boring, but once you get to some of the later sections of the maps, they do, like I said, have some pretty cool landscapes. There's one in particular that reminds me a lot of Death Stranding with some mossy rocks and mountains in the background. Well, the areas that you will be running around can vary from different biomes to these weird alien structures to this clean and pristine hub of Albion. Sadly, what you're going to be doing in these areas is pretty similar from area to area without much variation or changes. And by now, from watching the gameplay, you can see that it's heavily, and I mean heavily, inspired by the likes of Warframe and Destiny, with it borrowing different aspects from the games and mixing them into this smorgasbord of ideas for the most part. It sort of works. The main story of the game was something that took me roughly 50 to 60 hours to finish, and that time could have been, I believe, much shorter had I not spent so much time trying to grind for loot drops at certain stages of my playthrough. And I'll just rip the band-aid off real quick. I don't think the story of this game was good. Half the time, I wasn't even sure what the hell was going on. Basically, you play as a Descendant, which are the characters that you play as, and you must defeat these alien faction called the Volgus as they try to gain control over something called the Ironheart. The villains, all of the villains here, they're pretty bland. Your maniacal mustache twirling bad guys. They don't really offer much in terms of depth or repertoire within the world itself.
My conquest will be complete. Raise your weapons. Drown the enemy in fear. My power will lead you to victory.
That is kind of a miss, but the NPC vendors also are most of the time going to be characters that you will end up playing as, or they are people that just serve as your vendor for you to craft and upgrade materials and whatnot. I'm not saying they're all bad, but a majority of the time I wasn't that invested or interested in all the characters that were present. Progressing through the game's main story will have you starting out in a patrol zone akin to something like a small space on a planet in Destiny. Kind of like how the planets are all split up into separate chunks. Here, instead of being able to freely roam around them, in the First Descendant, you have to complete a set of missions that will unlock the next area. That will then allow you to fast travel to the new little section. Each of those little sections is also going to be its own instance within these areas, so you will be doing the same type of missions from area to area. And the repetition can get to you early on, and it almost did to me, so I wasn't actually even sure if I was going to get past the 3 to 4 hour mark. But I kept pushing, and I'm pretty glad I did. A lot of the fun really starts to happen when you progress further and further into the mission structure and then reach some of the void boss battles. Think of these as sort of the DPS check for your character, as you need to defeat these bosses before you can move to the next area of the map. And while early on these can pose a little bit of a challenge, eventually, if you make it towards the later grind of the game, you'll be farming these bosses over and over again to unlock unique blueprints that you'll need to craft different weapons and descendants, which a little more here in the next section. While the main gameplay aspect and loop can seem a little boring and repetitive, I would say that one aspect of the game that I found to be the most refreshing was the different descendants and their different kits that they have. At the start, you're going to have access to one of three basic characters, either Lepic, Ajax, or Viessa, which is the one that I ended up going with. And early on, they can seem a bit shit, but the game does want you to play and level up with them so that you can get them up to the cap of 40. This way that you have all their abilities leveled up and you can start to min-max whatever build that you're going to be going for. You can even take this a step further because once you hit level 40, you're able to use something called a crystallization catalyst, and that will allow you to assign a mod slot on your particular character or weapon, but at the cost of resetting said item's rank back down to 1, forcing you to go through the whole releveling process, which can seem a little monotonous, but it's worth it on characters and items you really want to invest in. I do also want to mention the Ultimate Descendant variants because those are kind of a hot topic in the game. These are different versions of existing characters, but with more potential for modding and different mods that are only unlocked on those characters. And they do come with a unique skin and other stuff, but they are some of the hardest Descendants to earn in the game currently, with about a 3% chance at their items dropping. Or you can swipe your credit card and buy them. So the choice is yours, but like I said, that 3% chance drop rate is very low. Modding is also going to be a very important component to any building character within this game because the mods are really what sets apart your build from being trash tier to god tier. When I first started modding in the early game, I wasn't individually modding and slotting them in. I was using the auto assign function a lot of the time and it was giving me a pretty decent loadout for the early stages, but once I hit the level 40 to 50s, I would say that's when I really felt like your mod setup and weapons really started to matter. Where you also slot your mods is also something that you want to keep an eye out, as each mod is going to have an emblem on it, and placing that mod into a slot on either your weapon or your descendant with the same matching symbol will actually half the cost of any mod, allowing you to fill up more slots, effectively giving you more leeway on how you want to build your character. So you can start to see where the real min-maxing potential comes with prestiging your characters, which it's going to be a long grind, so you really want to make sure that it's something or a character that you really want to invest in before setting out on that journey. The crafting and loot grind that is present that sort of ties into the previous section is one of my favorite things about the game, but also I would say probably my largest pain point that I have with the game after 2 or so weeks with it. Almost all the items in this game are going to be crafted items that you will have to gather the materials for and build the components necessary to assemble whatever weapon or descendant that you're trying to go for. This is like 4 separate pieces found at 4 separate locations, just for a weapon or a descendant, and that's just for one piece that you then have to do 4 times over. So buckle in, it is a fucking grind. In other games, they will tell you that you have a chance for this item to drop if you complete this particular activity. You might get it, you might not. In the First Descendant, you do have the same type of system, but you can inspect a particular mission or activity and see the possible rewards that you can obtain from completing, with some of those rewards only having a small percentage chance or a larger percentage chance, sometimes ranging from 50 to 100%. Then you have the mid-tier level, which while at times including a blueprint or a descendant piece, these are going to have a little bit smaller of a drop chance, anywhere from like 20 to 38%, I've found. Then finally, you have your ultra rare materials and items, and that's anywhere from 6% to 3%, all the way down to a measly 0.5%. While I've gotten a couple of those 0.5s and 3%, most of the time it was purely luck and it wasn't even the item that I was really farming for or trying to get at that time. So I do believe that this is how the game was designed and meant to be played, running these same missions over and over again, and the chance that you get the one drop that you need. But the other side to this is that when you need to take that material you've earned and decode it in one of the Void Interceptor boss missions, you have a percentage chance at getting that item that you want. And if you don't get it, looks like you have to go back, grind for some more material at a chance of getting what you want. Yes, if you really wanted to, you could open your wallet, swipe that credit card, but I never really understood paying to unlock whatever character you want in the game. If that's something you want to do, by all means, knock yourself out. But I think it takes away a lot of the fun in the loot chase and grind that you've spent hours and hours to get. And just when all hope's lost, you're about to get off for the night and you finally get it, and you just, that feeling of euphoria is a lot greater than swiping a credit card, I believe. While I do wonder if a greater loot refresh or buff to the drop rates is something that they would consider, I don't think it will be, but hopefully something is done about the Void Reactor events. They did sort of update these on the July 18th patch, with them buffing the actual amount that you could earn from these in both the normal and the hard mode difficulties. And the outpost is another thing. The timer, that's a big issue. It's 5 minutes after you complete a Void outpost, and I wish they would either just remove the timer or make it like 1 minute or something, because those really are annoying to have to farm. I guess arguably one of the most annoying parts early on was taking an item that had a 20% chance at dropping from completing a mission, and then taking that item that I got once I got it out of that 20% chance drop rate and taking it to another mission that also gave me another 20% chance to get the item that I wanted. So really, you're just at the hands of mercy, RNG. As I say that, you start to see some of the issues that could arise when you speak of long-term grind for this game. Long story short, this game is going to be one hell of a grind, so buckle up if you are planning on playing. And as we reach my final thoughts and wrap it up, this isn't like a build guide, a really extensive review. I just wanted to talk about my experience here with the first 2 weeks or so, my first 70 hours. So if you'd asked me a couple months ago if I would have been playing the First Descendant, I would have asked you, what the hell is that game? And looking back over my memory, I do remember seeing a couple of trailers over the past year, but those trailers really did nothing to sell me on the game and what it was trying to do. So when Destiny 2 wrapped up the final shape and was taking a break in between acts in the seasonal content, I figured, why the hell not? I'll play a looter shooter. This isn't going to be a game that I can just recommend to anyone off the street. The looting and overall grindiness of the game is the first thing that I think could turn a majority of the people off. Then you have the crowd that's seen the microtransactions and they just don't want anything to do with it. And I don't think the game is a great must-play hit, but if you're someone that likes the loot chase and the grind, this might be something that you can sink hundreds and maybe even thousands of hours into. Because the developers have semi-announced some plans that they're going to be adding in more characters, one on August 1st actually, and then a new Ultimate Descendant, along with some other side seasonal content as well. One thing that I would actually like to see down the line, and they've talked about it a little bit, is a dungeon or raid mode. I think they said something like December, but I would like a little bit more information on that, kind of what the drop rates, what all that might entitle. While I'm still personally diving into the end game, the current goal for me is to unlock as many as Descendants as I can and really try to find the one that I can invest a lot of time and effort into. I'm currently leveling and getting Valbial set up, which is a lot of fun. I just got Blair after having some abysmal luck, but I needed him to do some of the Void Fragments, so I think I've got a plenty amount of time to sink into this for about the next month or so till the Black Ops 6 beta, and then Star Wars Outlaws. So if you did make it this far, let me know what you think of the game. Have you been playing the First Descendant? What do you think? Drop a comment below. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy. If you did make it this far, I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day. This has been my review for the First Descendant. Thank you for watching.